Morning, guys. How many of you have read the Shank postmortem at the Game Developer magazine? Okay. I'm trying not to repeat too much of that. I think it's available to everybody, so you guys can read that. I really tried to get this talk around things that I didn't get to talk to about, or things that I found out after I had written that postmortem. For people who don't know me very well or have seen the work that we've done, it's interesting that we've gone basically more and more violent over time. It's we started with Eats, and it was family friendly, and then Sugar Rush was a game that was teen, and then we did a mature thing. So I'm not really sure what we're going to go to next, but I think it's going to be fun. We're pretty good at stabbing people now. I think people seem to resonate with that for us. It's good. I was preparing this slide, and people kept asking me what Shank looked like when we first started. And, I thought, it pretty much always looked the same. And then I realized that there was this one test that I did with Jeff over a weekend when we were first thinking about what Shank was going to be. And so we built this thing. And this is actually what Shank looked like right from the beginning. Actually, if I can just get I wonder if this will work. I want to show you guys the actual the demo here. I'm going to try real quick and see if I can get there. I had it like right up here. Maybe I'll do it right at the end if I can. But it was all done in Flash, and we did it over a weekend, and you can move around. Basically, all the moves were the same. You could kind of get a feel of how things were going. And that's what gave us confidence to move forward. And then, a few weeks later, we had a new character design, and it was basically Shank, and it was basically the same from then on. And in fact, so much so that what you saw here is in early January. What you saw here was also in January. And then the next thing I'm going to show you was in early March, so 2 months later. There's a double jump in there. There's some of the little differences that we had. Basically, it looked like So in any case, that was when I look back at that, I'm like, what did we do for the next year? And some, it was a lot of engine work. There's a lot of tweaks. There's the animation was different over time. We fixed a lot of bugs. We put it on 3 platforms, all sorts of things. But it's still pretty amazing that we got to that point in 2 months, and it basically stayed the same. I don't think I've ever worked on a game where it basically, from a visual standpoint and a feel standpoint, stayed the same. After 2 months of development. Of course, Monaco's going to follow me, so whatever I did, it doesn't matter. So some other really important things that happened to us is PAX 2009. A lot of you guys have heard about that. I wanted to show the picture of what was there. We were talking to a lot of publishers at the time, trying to get a deal done for Shank, because we really needed funding to finish the game. Because we're a team of 6 and growing, and we were doing other side jobs at the same time. We really wanted to concentrate on this thing, and the publishers were telling us to not show Shank, and I think you guys have all heard this before, this kind of thing, where they're like, hey, don't show your game out, because that will hinder our efforts to promote your game. Of course, in my experience, they're kind of a multiplier on your own efforts. So if you put in 0, then they multiply on your 0, and then you just get 0. And that happened to us previously on Eats. So we're like, no, we're just going to show the game. We haven't even signed anything yet, so it's ours to show. But at the same time, we couldn't announce what platforms it was going to be on. Again, a lot of you guys have run into that. So we just kind of made this box from Staples. And spray painted it and covered it up, and it was, stuck whatever controllers in there that we could, including the Atari. Hey, maybe it'll go on the Atari, maybe on the Dreamcast. That'd be pretty sweet. And actually, it was a big hit because of that. Partly because of that. People really enjoyed that kind of story. So talking about some of the technically hard things, right there on the right, you can see our very first PlayStation image that was actually rendering anything that resembles Shank. So I took a picture of that, and you can see the prettiness that it was. We shipped on the PlayStation 3 simul-ship with the Xbox, but we didn't start porting until February, about mid-February, and then we shipped in June. So we had no code on the PlayStation, and then we shipped in June. So that was pretty fun. It worked out well for us. Another thing was 2 gigabyte downloads. I don't think I'd do that again. There was 1.4 gigabytes of movies in that game. So the rest of it was a game, 600 meg game. And fragmentation, I had no idea that, like, logically thinking, of course, all the hard drives would fragment, but I didn't think it was going to be a problem. We actually had problems up to where we'd have a magnitude of difference. So one person would take 10 seconds to load the level, and another person would take a minute to load the level. And it was literally that bad. And none of the certification caught that. All our internal testing, EA's testing, Microsoft's testing, our external testing, none of it caught it because they were all using fresh Xboxes. So, if you're going to do an Xbox, you test the fragmentation thing. And so that's what we learned, and we had to fix that post-launch. It also took us a week and a half to fix it and a month to deploy the thing. So that's another really annoying thing. But it was a really bad experience for the people who had it. We also almost went broke while making Shank. It was enough that we had to do temporary optional wage decreases. We paid all the wages back with interest. So that was pretty awesome, actually. And it was kind of around that was in January 2010 where that happened. We also had a shareholder loan to tide things over, a bank loan against my house and Jeff's house. The reason, one of the big reasons why we did it was because we felt like we had not only did we want to get the best deal for ourselves, but when we were negotiating the publishing deal, things just didn't feel right. It really felt like we were getting squeezed. And I felt like even if I took the deal and it worked out for us, it wouldn't bode well for the next person who came in after me. And so the deal, that we were looking at just wasn't really right. We would have survived, and that's about it. So that's why we stepped away and we said no, because not only did I think that wasn't a great idea for us, but more importantly, I really felt like we have a responsibility. All of us have a responsibility in our actions on how it affects the industry. And so, with some contingencies in mind of what would happen if shit really went down, that's when we took the bank loans and reduced the assets and everything, and we just said no to the publisher deal and went with EA instead. That had a much more fair deal. And I really do think that affects the industry. And everybody who does that affects the industry in quite a significant manner, in fact. And so, we're pretty proud that we were able to do that. There's other random things that had happened in there. We built the levels in PAX East last year. We had this one great level, and it was the Butcher level, if you guys have played it. And it was just really polished. It worked out really well. And then we also had the first level. And we showed this to the press, and they were like, oh, this is great. And they're like, when is it coming out? I'm like, summer. It's going to come out in the summer. I'm shipping in like 3 months. But that was actually all the content we had. We showed them everything. So after that, between March and June, we built the rest of the game, which was 13 more levels. So we had 2 levels, and then we built 13 in 3 months. And dishwashers, halfway through the development, we had a flood as well. That was fantastic. I was actually on vacation at the time, the first vacation in some time, and I was in Hawaii actually. And then I got a call, and they're like, your office is flooded. I'm like, what do you want me to do about it? I mean, I'm not even there. And this picture here is actually the aftermath. So the water was much higher than this before someone actually ended up taking a picture. What happened was the next door neighbor's dishwasher had exploded. What's really interesting is I think we were protected or something. We were just really, really lucky. Because first of all, our servers were in the other room that didn't get flooded. So that was awesome. And then the second thing is, if you look, of course you can't see them because we lifted all the computers. But the computers are actually all on the floor. And the power supplies are on the bottom of the computer. And then the water level went like 3-4 inches or something. That's what I heard anyway. Again, I wasn't there. But all the computers miraculously still work today. And I honestly don't understand. Maybe it was, we were trying to figure out what happened. Maybe there was like enough dust stuck in there that would protect it or something. So, thankfully we don't clean anything. Right? I'm not sure. Anyway, so somehow we were, there was an angel or something, because otherwise that would have been some big disaster. I mean, at least our servers weren't affected anyway, so it was good. Some other stuff here. Cinematics is one of the big problems that we had because we had such big cash flow issues. All the cinematics came right at the end. This is the mouth chart for Cesar. And you'll see, this is some of our storyboards, and you see it just kind of gets more and more rough as time goes on. You look at the last one, it's like, what the hell is that, And so, they were really meticulous at first, directing everything and doing the proper storyboards. And then at the end, it was just like, okay, we have to animate now. So here's some scribble, and then you go off and do it. Yeah. Some post-launch data that I wasn't able to put out. 30% of the people completed the game. It took people around, 3 or 4 hours for the first playthrough, and then they had the co-op mode and stuff like that. So obviously played into whether or not you complete the game. Only 1% of people beat the hard mode, 1.9 or 1.6 rather. Our conversion rate is pretty good, 26%. And I think in my next game, I'm going to have a smaller download size. Well, at least not 1.4 gigs of movies anyway. Actually, even that was, as we were developing it, the movies just kept peaking up, and I would compress it some more and do other tricks to push it down. And then the animators would go, hey, look, more cinematics, and then push it up, and then I had to push it down, and it just kind of bobbled along. And then we just finally squeaked by at 1.9 gigs kind of deal. The last point is aggressive versus defensive players is another really interesting thing that we learned after launch, which kind of shows that we didn't do enough testing before launch, was that there's aggressive players and defensive players, because, I would get people saying, the controls are just the most amazing things ever. This is just so sweet. And then other people are like, I'm stuck. I don't know why I can't move. And we realized it was because it was a different style of player. So if you were really offensive and you wanted to kill people and stab things, which is what we wanted you to do, it would feel really good because all the transitions were working really well, and you could just get into the groove of it really well. But if you wanted to run and you wanted to, just get out of the fight, that was not something that we anticipated really. So that's when the controls got sticky, when it's like, I do a move and I want to run away. That didn't work out so well, and we didn't realize that. But, it was definitely a data point for us for the future on things to think about, just the different play styles. Other thing is, everybody asks me how the relationship between us and EA was. And, I always couch that with context, which is that, it worked really well for us. And sometimes it can work really well. And sometimes, obviously, it doesn't work so well. So I've got some stuff going on here. And I wanted to start with the less good and then go to the good because, usually it's the good and the bad. But people are interested about the less good. So, we had a deadline that was 2 months before we really had to ship. And that was some internal thing from EA that they really, really wanted us to get it out in a certain time for other financial reasons that had nothing to do with the actual game. So, that was maybe a month actually before we had to ship. But anyway, that extra month would have been put to good use in terms of testing and tweaking. So that was unfortunate, and I think they understand that was unfortunate, and I don't think they'd do that with us again anyway. Old style PR is something that I'm really passionate about. Is that the PR side of things in the old ways when they're doing the box product stuff, they set up these time slots that the media can meet with you, and it's like listen to us talk as opposed to talk to the media. And I really think that it's important for us to talk to the media and actually have a conversation and have everybody understand where you're coming from. And obviously, as an indie, that's one of our strengths. But just as digital download continues to go, that I think is the way that it's going to go, as opposed to this press release thing. I mean, press releases are horrible. I just never really want to do a press release, and I'm always against it, pretty much. But sometimes I get coaxed into it. And we did a press release where Marianne Krozik it was announced that Marianne was our writer, and she actually wrote God of War as well, and then she wrote Shank. And she had written Shank like way back when we started with us, right in the beginning. And then when we did the press release of it, and it said, Marianne Krozik signed to do Shank, right? And the media, rightfully so, said, why are you hiring a writer at the end of the project? Well, why are you doing that? Right? And the reason is because the press release was a one-way communication. There's no way to talk back and say, or no way to have a discussion and say, actually, no. We actually had her on right from the beginning and she was involved. But instead, the news just spread out that, this game Shank, after signing with EA, decided that they need a high-profile story writer, which totally wasn't the case. So anyway, it's a big rant that I can probably go on for quite some time with APR. But kind of preaching to the choir here too. Consumer expectations, signing with a publisher, suddenly you're an EA game. And that brings with it all sorts of other things. It's just, they have different expectations of what the game might be or might have, or the features it might have and the length it might be and all that kind of thing. And we definitely felt that from everybody. And I mean, that's just something you have to keep in mind. It's just a thing that's there. And of course, there's a possibly reduced upside if you're not self-funding it. But I mean, the fact is that we wouldn't have shipped Shank without some funding. So it's not really something that's on my mind. The fact is that we ended up we kept the IP, we kept the creative freedom. Here's the good stuff. They really trusted us to do what we wanted to do. And we just went and did it. And part of the reason that was possible was because we had created Shank so far already. I mean, in 2 months, it was basically the same game as the end. And so nobody was going to come in and say, I want a different game than that. Although, back in the day when I pitched Eats, we got like, hey, can you make it into a Super Monkey Ball game? And things like that. So maybe they did want Shank to be, I don't know, Machete or something. We had other great things as true support. I mean, I felt like it was actually a supportive team as opposed to most of the time. I mean, I've been working with publishers for a long time, so a lot of times it can get to the point where the publisher has become a cost center for you rather than a support network for you. And for us, this specific time, it was definitely a support network for us because I guess the stars aligned. I mean, it was just a really great fit. Multi-platform was absolutely huge. It's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to do a multi-platform simultaneous ship without a publisher. They actually did do marketing, which is pretty cool. And they actually spent money on marketing, which is a novelty. Reduced risk and less platform requirements. I mean, I didn't have to localize Shank because we knew that it wasn't really going to make much of a difference in sales. So we didn't localize it, and right up to the last moment, we're still tweaking text to make it a little bit better. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we were not with a publisher. So all good things. And of course, everyone asks, how did we do? Well, in the first 24 hours, we sold more than Eats Showdown in its lifetime. So that's pretty awesome. It was reported, and I'm not privy to talk about the actual sales numbers. So here it is. XBLA reported 41,000 units in the first week, which is respectable and profitable for everyone. But the main thing there is that multi-platform was key to our profitability. It really was a difference for Shank specifically. It was the difference between profitable and not profitable. So it was a really great thing to see. And on Steam, I think everybody here loves Steam. It just works so well, and it's got a really long tail, and it just keeps on going as well. So as an overview, we had prototyping for 3 months. We did tools forever so that we could actually build those 13 levels in 3 months. The demo that you saw in 2 months was really cobbled together with old tools and things like that, and we couldn't have finished the game with that. There was 6 months of just madness. It was one of the great things though is that the engineers actually did such a great job during the first during the 9 months of tools making. Is that they never had to. I think they worked 3 weekends throughout the whole project, so that was pretty amazing. And even in the weekends, it's like 1 day out of it. It was really the designers and the artists that got the crunch of it because of the content crunch. We were also working on another project at the same time that we're doing Shank, and that really went awry, trying to do 2 projects with not enough people. And that was definitely one of the hardest times in my life. Listening to the Meet Mortem and talking about their stress levels and things like that. For people who know me, it's actually pretty hard to stress me out. But that was probably one of the most stressful times, and having to go in the office and just work it out and not show how stressed I was to the rest of the staff, because that affects everybody. If you're stressed, you're just going to permeate that with everybody. So when everybody left, and it was just me and Marcus, who's my high school buddy who started the company with me, he'd stay late with me to finish things until like 1 or 2 a.m. And I'd tell him, I just don't know how we're going to get this done. How's this going to work? We just kind of fought through it really, and took a look at the risk. It was a pretty tough time. It was around April of last year. And I wanted to finish off with some of the thoughts of the future, which I've been thinking about a lot. There's a whole wall of text here, so I'm just going to talk about it here. The best breakout hits on Xbox Live and PSN, they made $10 million, which for us is like, holy crap, that's a lot of money. But, when you're talking about the lower number of games, the best games make $10 million or, $20 million, whatever it is. And the publishers look at that, and they look at their investment into it, and they look, and the whole economy looks at this. And it's like, the numbers just not really adding up all that much, and the ceiling's pretty low. But there's so much potential there that could work. And I think the platforms really need to. Well, we've been talking about this forever, and they've been talking about it forever to improve the platform time over time, which is create new ways to microtransactions or subscription or better ways to find games. And they need more and more things. That's what they need. And they need to continually improve that platform, like Steam and iOS have. And I think that's how you're going to be able to create this proper ecosystem. And I think that one of the flaws there actually is the king making. The summer arcade frenzy is, if I got in summer arcade, great. I'm not going to complain. It is king making. That's what it is, right? It's a huge boost, but everything around it kind of falls to the side, and you kind of got to do whatever you can to kind of pull yourself back up a little bit. I think that it's definitely a double-edged sword. It's a dangerous thing to rely so much on king making, on all these promotions where it's all focused on like this 2-week period. You really need to be able to spread out so that there is, everybody can win. And we've been talking about it forever. All of us have been talking to Microsoft and PlayStation, and they've been talking back and saying, yes, we know we need more. We need recommendation systems. Literally about 5 years ago, they were talking to us about recommendation systems. And other ways to find games. Just like instead of top-selling game of all time, top-selling last week, last month, last 35 days, whatever. Just more ways for people for games to organically get found is the way that we're going to be able to actually have a proper system where people can take risks and also have a much longer tail. I mean, Eats, when it shipped, I think it made like $20,000 or something when it shipped. And over time, that's when we really started making the money. So we were able to take that kind of risk. We're saying, okay, we're going to launch this game, and over a long period of time, we can make money. But actually on the consoles, it's not so much. It falls off a lot faster, unless you're one of the top. And so you really need to be able to find new ways of being able to make money on it. Free-to-play microtransactions, that's one. Steam style, all the recommendation systems, all the different ways to get people back. Instead of deal a week, it's like deal a day, all that kind of thing. It's all important things. The main thing there is just the abundance mentality. It's not trying to squeeze down. It's like, Steam understands that if your game is out on more platforms, they'll actually sell more on Steam, not less. So, this exclusivity thing doesn't actually help that. I mean, it helps hardware sales, and I guess that's the motivation for it. But if they want, games to sell, exclusivity isn't going to sell it, in my opinion. And codes, free codes, it's just so easy, right? The other day I asked for 25,000 free codes on Steam. It was like 5 minutes later, here you go. Here's your 25,000 free codes of Eats. It's just such a slow process when you're working in the console. Anyway, that's exactly 25 minutes, so I guess I'm done. But I hope that was helpful for some of you.